Moke Niemann, the top GM from the USA, is playing his tournament of the career here in my country in Zagreb in the Tournament of Peace of 2023. After 6 rounds that have been played so far in the super event, Moke Niemann has now 5 wins and only 1 draw. Really spectacular performance, almost like Bobby Fischer used to play his tournaments. Really crazy performance, and Hans already gained more than 20 rating points in the super event. Maybe in this super event here Moke Niemann can again get his 2700 rating points. I wish him all of the best because he's playing really brilliant chess, sharp tactical chess. He's playing also great opening theory, so in my opinion his games are worth to follow. So let's see now his last game. He played now with the black pieces against Ivan Cheparinov. Really interesting game, I think, with cool tactics but also with great opening strategies. So pay good attention. I think this is really a perfect game here played by Moke Niemann. So with the white pieces, Ivan Cheparinov opened with the move c4, the English opening, knight to f6, knight to c3, e5, knight to f3, and after move knight to c6 we have now the king's English variation, the 4 knights here variation, the 4 knight sideline. All of the knights are out. White has this advanced pawn on c4 and black has this advanced pawn on e5. The position is similar, of course, to the Sicilian defense, but of course it's sort of a reverse Sicilian setup. Now Cheparinov continues with this Fianchetto variation with the move g3, which is, in my opinion, simply one of the best ways to proceed. We have bishop to b4 by Moke Niemann, hitting the knight on c3. Very important idea. In some lines we're trying, of course, to get the knight here on c3 and mess up the pawn structure, create, of course, a double pawn structure on the c file. Here Cheparinov prevents it with knight to d5. We have now the move e4, and now an interesting line here by Cheparinov, knight to h4. The knight is a little bit misplaced. It's simply on the edge of the board. It's not the optimal square for the knight, but so far the knight is not in danger. Still, there is this f5 square that we can use in order to get out of this mess. And the problem, I think, also for black is here a little bit that you cannot pick up the knight on d5 immediately. If you do that, then you're running, I think, into a favorable game for white. Here white should be much better. After c takes d5, knight to e7, for instance, we play queen to c2, and there is simply no good way anymore to protect the e4 pawn. You don't have even time to pick up here the pawn on d5 because queen to e4 is simply winning the game. The knight is hanging, also the bishop is hanging. It comes, of course, with a check. The game is over here for black. So you could maybe try after queen to c2 here to support your bishop, but again here queen to e4 would simply pick up the pawn, and this is a messed up game. If you try f5, for instance, there is a game in the database in which f5 has been played, but now comes the stunning knight takes f5, knight takes f5, queen to e4 again with 3 attacks here against the knight, against the king, against the bishop. We gained enough material, and I think again white should be much better. So you have to castle, but again would simply pick up the pawn here on e4. That's why this is not a good line anymore for black. So that's why from knight to h4, of course, Moke Niemann knows his stuff in this opening. He's not playing knight takes d5. He simply continues with kingside castle. We have a3 by Cheparinov, bishop to c5. Here Hans keeps his bishop very active, bishop to g2, and now d6. Notice, as I said, that the knight is now really out of game with the move d6. Also now the f5 square is taken for the knight, so there are some threats to play g5. This move g5 cannot be played immediately because here Cheparinov castle. For instance, if you play g5 immediately to somehow trap the knight, then white has this resource, a counterattack with d4. You play maybe knight takes d4, but now with bishop to g5, here the knight is hanging on f6. The bishop is locked by this pawn. You cannot retreat here. The game is over, I think, again here for black. So you see many dirty opening traps Cheparinov has already prepared, but as I said, Moke Niemann knows his stuff. He is not falling for this. He's playing, first of all, solid developing chess, of course. First of all, rook to e8, and supports his main advantage, I think, in this position. He has now the space advantage now with the pawn on e4. And here Cheparinov makes now maybe even the first tiny little inaccuracy in the opening stage. He plays a move that's not good, that many of us would play, d3, but from this point on I think black is simply taking over. There are only 2 good chances to proceed here. You can play b4, very aggressive to play against the bishop, or you can play e3. It seems again so Cheparinov missed maybe this line with e3. e3 has been played many times in chess history. For instance, there is a game Hikaru Nakamura against Vishy Anand in which Hikaru won the game with the white pieces in this particular line. After e3, what maybe black could do again is this idea g5, but now look at this. With b4, bishop to b6, we simply continue now with bishop to b2, hitting also the knight on f6. Black could maybe try knight takes d5, but again c takes d5 comes with a direct threat against the knight, so both pieces are hanging. Maybe black continues with knight to e5, we play f4 from white's perspective, knight to c4, attacking the bishop. Again, it seems so that black is gaining some material, but now after f takes g5, knight to b2, the queen is coming now in a beautiful way into the game. f7 is weak. You could maybe try here queen to d7 or queen to e7 in order to protect the pawn on f7, but now the stunning idea is bishop to h3, and here I think black is simply busted, because if you pick up the bishop, then you're falling apart here around the square f7. The same thing happens if you play here queen to e7 instead of queen to d7, then bishop to e4 is working. Again, the queen gets deflected from the defense of the f7 square. The game is over again for black. You have a rook to e7, the same pattern happens, bishop to e4, and the game is over. So you see, d3 in the beginning was not a good choice. e3 had to be the move by Cheparinov, or at least b4, at least some kind of an attack. d3 is simply too slow here by Cheparinov, and Hans Moke Niemann, I think from this point on, is taking over in the game. Nothing spectacular. Still, if white plays this game correctly, still you can get out of this probably, but I think in top GM level, whenever black is taking over, when you feel secure, when you feel that you have now finally the initiative, especially with the black pieces, I think in top GM level you cannot get out of this mess, because Hans is really a great attacker, and notice now how Hans will simply keep the attacking flow. With every move now, Hans Moke Niemann is playing a very aggressive move. Queen to d3, knight to e5. As I said, every now move is a beautiful tempo against white pieces. Queen to c2, c6. Again, the knight has to retreat. Now knight takes c4. Hans gained the pawn. Knight to a4, of course, by Cheparinov, attacking the knight on c4, but also the bishop on c5. Hans protects the knight on c4, and now Cheparinov makes maybe even the crucial mistake of this particular game, plays now a rook to d1, and this wasn't good because first of all, this move is simply too slow. You are of course attacking the bishop on c5, but actually the best way here was immediately to pick up simply the piece. After something like d takes c5, we can kick away the knight here from white's perspective. You cannot take so far the pawn on c5, because also this one is hanging on b3, but now finally rook to d1 would be very good, and then after something like bishop to b2, we maybe takes, and now with bishop to d4, at least you're continuing the game with the bishop pair. Maybe in some lines you can hang on to this position, but this was at least somehow a way to survive this particular position with the white pieces. But now after rook to d1, as I said, here Cheparinov made a huge mistake in the game, and from this point on, I think white is busted here. Hans Moke Niemann found simply the best continuation. Maybe you can also try to see now the best idea here for black. Pause the video and try to see now the best continuation for Hans Moke Niemann. Hans, of course, played it very great move. Okay, here Hans played a beautiful bishop takes f2. This is the way to go. After king to f2, knight to g4, of course, a beautiful follow-up, and again Cheparinov doesn't react correctly. The only way maybe to survive this attack is king to g1, but still black is much better here. After king to g1, we can play b5, immediately hitting the knight. For instance, if you retreat here to c3, then the queen is coming in a brutal way into the game. This is not working. You could maybe try here bishop to c6 first. Still, it's a complicated line, because we'll simply pick up the piece. You have to retreat now with your knight. We attack simply the bishop. You maybe grab this one, the rook on e8, but now the knights are coming into the game. Rook to d1, queen to d1, and now here queen takes e8 is, I think, again a much better continuation here for black, because okay, the material is about equal. This is of course an opposite color bishop's endgame. but black should be much better, especially because of the light square bishop. You have already given up your light square bishop. The light square bishop is the key protector of the king. You have also dark square problems again if the queen comes somehow on b6. So the queen and bishop combined, I think, against white's king would cause simply too much danger in white's position. As I said, maybe you can somehow try to survive this, but I guarantee you, you'll not have a pleasant game here with the white pieces. So here, instead of this move, king to g1, king to e1 was played by Cheparinov, but now b5 again by Hans, rook to d4 by Cheparinov. He's trying maybe to force a winning idea after this one. B takes a4, then rook to c4, but still, even then afterwards, queen to b6 is again very dangerous to handle here for black. So here after rook to d4, Hans of course continues the attacking flow with this beautiful idea: knight to e3, bishop to e3, knight takes e3, and again Cheparinov has several choices. For instance, if you play queen to d2, this wasn't played in the game, then this one is coming: knight takes g2, knight takes g2, and now b takes a4, rook to d6, and now again with queen to b6, I think black should be much better. Again, dark square problems, again light square problems. King is centralized here on e1. You have many tactical issues here that you have to solve. In my opinion, again, not a good continuation here for white. But after knight takes e3, here Cheparinov played even a worse move. He played now queen to c3. Here Hans played a beautiful bishop to d5. We have bishop to e4. If you play, of course, bishop to d5, then c takes d5 is going to happen. The knight is now trapped. Also here, you see the knight doesn't have any escape routes. Both of the knights are on the edge of the board, so it's not a good continuation anymore for white again. So after bishop to e4, Hans took, bishop takes e4, queen to e3, bishop to d5, attacking now the queen. Hans finally took, now the knight on a4, rook takes a4, and now after rook to e5, here Hans again takes the natural square for the knight here to escape on f5. The problem that we have talked about in the beginning, the knight is still misplaced. Look at this, there's simply no good square for the knight. Now the bishop is hitting even the g2 square, and after rook to d4, here g5 was played by Hans Moke Niemann, and in this particular position, believe it or not, Ivan Cheparinov resigned. So brilliant play here by Hans. Great first of all, opening theory, opening knowledge that he showed here. Great tactics with this stunning bishop takes f2. Great follow-ups, also very important here to say, because sometimes we see some tactics but the follow-ups are not good. He saw everything that he's supposed to see. Very spectacular game here by Hans Moke Niemann. So okay, great English opening theory here by Hans. He has now very great opportunities to win such a prestigious tournament. Of course, this is not top GM level. This is not a tournament where, I don't know, Magnus, Anish, Hikaru are playing. But still, if you win such a game against such a strong opponent like Ivan Cheparinov, and he won also his game against Vasily Ivanchuk, many great Croatian players are playing also here. So great performance by Hans Moke Niemann, and as I said, with this performance I think he can get again his 2700 rating mark. So okay, cool game. If you want to see some other commented chess games, here my YouTube chess channel, check out our coverage of some games so far. Here are some links of our playlist, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say? Chess is the best, of course.